If I do too good of a job of that, Scott, then I'll immediately be accused of being a regime propagandist. That's just that's just goes without saying these days, right? But what one thing I will share though, if you Joe and Scott want to dial this into policy and what's going on there, I learned very quickly after a couple of press conferences and media opportunities with their foreign ministers and so forth. They've given up. They've said on record, our policy is we have zero expectation that the U.S. will ever abide by or any of its obligations of any of these agreements. So that's what they're saying publicly. But the conversation in America is that the MOU is a working document, and we're oscillating back and forth with the Iranians. And the Iranian conversation is, no, you guys are staging provocations in the Strait of Hormuz to create a pretext to escalate militarily against us, to hit targets, to degrade our ability to manage the strait physically with infrastructure, radar, naval base, and so forth. They know exactly what the U.S. is doing. And, Scott probably knows more about this than I do, but it's pretty clear that the Department of Defense or Department of War, I don't even want to give it the legitimacy of calling it the Department of War, because it's just so it's barbaric, quite frankly. But anyway, they've already been funded for operations, a certain amount of operations. They have things to do. They have planned operations. This is one of those strategies. The window is 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever. The end of Trump's term, let's just say. Whether those are successful or not is another discussion. But they're going to get on with operations, and the U.S. has strategy. It might not work. It might not make any sense, but they're going to continue because they have to go and basically justify the amount of money they're spending. And so the Iranians are fully aware of all of this. And it's a conversation in America as everyone's kind of deluded, thinking that that's not really the case. No, we're doing this and doing that. They think that nobody else in the world knows that they're completely full of it. But the Iranians understand everything. That's the thing. And it's very public there. So this conversation that we're having might seem enlightened in comparison to Western mainstream media commentary on this. But I can tell you right now, this would not be out of place in Iranian broadcasting, mainstream. The conversations that we're having are just about the reality of what's happening in the Strait, what U.S. real intentions are, what the likelihood of these operations being successful from an American point of view. None of that is lost on the Iranians, I can tell you right now.
Patrick, you're 100% right. The military works on mission statements, and mission statements are tied to funding. And you don't turn them off without commander-in-chief authority. So everything's on full automatic. As a commander, if I went to Bahrain and was given, command of task force, 172.65, whatever, making up a number here. But, my job was to, monitor Iranian fishing fleet activity and commercial dhows, and interview the fishermen and try to recruit people for this, that, and the other thing. That mission doesn't end until I'm ordered to stop it. So all of the missions, and whatever mission they've been given, the mission continues until you're ordered to stop it. As a commander, you're not allowed to stop on your own volition. You're not allowed to wake up in the morning and go, God, I think we're failing in Iran, therefore I'm not going to do my mission anymore. You've been given a mission, you will accomplish the mission, and you will keep going until you are ordered to stop, or the money runs out. And sometimes even when the money runs out, you're told to, adapt. We have not changed our underlying policy. That's the other thing. People need to be careful about Trump waking up and going, oh my God. Until he issues the orders to terminate operations, to shut it down, to close up shop, to come home. But he can't do that because every one of these operations is linked to a national security strategy, a defense strategy, So you have to do a fundamental rethink of how you want America to operate in the world, in West Asia, et cetera. And that's not happening right now. That's not happening. And so anybody who thinks, I mean, anybody, oh, we've lost the war, therefore America's going to leave the Middle East. No, it isn't going to happen. The military, it's like the beast that can never die. You cut off the head, it's going to come back because the mission still is there. And the military will never stop implementing the mission until they're ordered to stop implementing or until Congress cuts the money off. And even then, as I said, they will feed additional money in. The military, it just operates that way. And so does the CIA. That's the other thing. The CIA is even worse because a lot of remember, the CIA, the way it was created was to be covert to avoid scrutiny from the United States Congress, strictly. And so the CIA has things happening that will never stop happening until the CIA itself disappears, and then it will morph into something different. It's more dangerous than the Ministry of War, the Department of Defense. But you're 100% right. None of this changes until we get a fundamental rethink of how we're going to deal with the Middle East. Trump getting beat or Trump waking up changes nothing because the mission will continue.
And also, Scott, the U.S. policies and outcomes are sometimes running on 4-year cycles, according to the administration. The Iranians' attitude, it's very clear, and I heard this from many different people, that they view this as a war of attrition, and they're prepared for the long haul because to them, to evict U.S. influence or U.S. military dominance in the Persian Gulf and the region, they want to get it done. That's a job they just want to get done, no matter how long it takes. And so they're not going to be swayed by threats or intimidation or coercion or sanctions or anything like that. They're like, no, and go ahead, send in the 82nd Airborne. They're like, yeah, we're waiting. We want to get this over with. So that's their attitude, and they're not afraid to die for that cause. And the U.S. would need to mobilize a lot of soldiers and a lot of people, and they're not going to go into that endeavor with the same attitude that the Iranians have no problem mobilizing people right now. So they've filled the ranks. They're probably having trouble processing recruits for Besiege, for their national military divisions, as well as the IRGC. So they have no problem mobilizing right now. So, and their ground forces, and Scott may know more about this than most, but that is one of their most competent departments of their entire military are their ground forces, and we don't know that, and we don't hear much about that. But they've been busy. They've been doing things in the recent weeks in Iraqi Kurdistan, for instance, and I would wager, and I'm not one to know how good Delta Force is, and I'm sure the U.S. have great special forces, no doubt about that, best in the world for mission specific. But I would say Iran has pretty competent and pretty capable special forces and deployment divisions and battalions and so forth. And they have a lot of history fighting wars on their territory as well. So, I mean, we need to consider all these things when you're talking about a war of attrition. Who are you going to wager is going to be more successful at the end of that? I would not bet on the U.S. and its current administration, or the way that we're looking at this conflict from the U.S. or Western perspective. I would not bet on that. I don't think the success probability is high.
Delta Force and the Rangers in 1993 October went into Mogadishu against strung out militants, and they got their asses handed to them. Called Black Hawk Down. People have seen the movie, read the book. Delta Force soldiers are good. I've served with them. I have great respect for them. A bullet in the brain kills them just like it kills everybody else. A bullet in the gut spills their guts. A bullet in the leg breaks their bones. They die. They're not immortal, and there's not that many of them. The Iranians have some of the finest fighting forces the world has ever seen. Some of their forces are, as as proficient in what they do as Delta is in what they do. Uh, you know, the idea that we're going to send in a JSOC, raid to accomplish mission X. No, because we won't be going up against the second grade. This isn't ID's cot chewing fanatics. We'll be going up against hardcore professionals who will slaughter us in the streets. Um, this is what we need to understand. We need to treat them with the utmost respect. These are just hardcore fighters. They're very good. They train very hard. They have great technology, great equipment. And if we think we're just going to waltz in there and push them over because they're just a bunch of ragheads, that just guarantees we will die in even greater numbers. I have great respect for my fellow Marines. I have great respect for the men and women in the Army and the Air Force. But if they don't respect their enemy, they're going to get beat very, very badly. And the Iranians are very, very good.
And the other question is, what are you fighting for?
Yeah.
What is the reason? How do you define victory? Those things don't seem to matter under this current president, and the general attitude and this kind of cocksure, Pete Hegseth style, Team America style approach. There's no talk about how you define victory. What is the political outcome? Is there a political settlement? No, nobody. There's so much disinterest in this, and that is everything actually. And as Scott kind of alluded to at the beginning, is the the best victory you could hope for in some cases is not to go to war or not to pick a fight with the wrong opponent, and that's a legitimate option. You could count that as a win in history. But all of these concepts seem to be completely out the window right now with the current U.S. administration, which really has a lot of people worried. A lot of people who are still considerate and thoughtful worried. I would think, but that's the thing that scares me the most.
I mean, just to build on what you just said, I mean, if you just think about it, Trump is caught in this escalation trap. Um, I mean, we're not going to win this fight. There's literally no outcome in which we win. Even if we use nuclear weapons, we're not going to win. The fact that we would use nuclear weapons is an automatic loss, because it hopefully it never gets to that. But our best, the best possible outcome we could have ever had was to negotiate to bring the negotiation that we had finalized on February 28th, where an Omani delegation was flying to Washington, D.C. That would have given Donald Trump the better nuclear deal than the JCPOA. And we wouldn't have any of these problems. None of these problems. We'd still have a military presence in the Gulf. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's not a defeat for America. We wouldn't have dead Americans. We'd have tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure still in place. We'd still have the perception of American military deterrent value. Today, we've lost. People have to understand what the damage that's been done to the reputation of the United States globally. Do you understand that the Japanese and South Koreans don't trust us anymore? Because we created this tripartite alliance against North Korea that was predicated on America always being there with its missile defense shield. And then we went in and yanked out THAAD and Patriot 3 batteries without even coordinating with them. And the Japanese, we told them we're going to give you 400 Tomahawks so you have an independent counter-strike capability. Now we said, you're not getting any Tomahawks. And they're going, wait a minute, what? Welcome to the day and age of being an American ally, where there's no such thing as an American ally anymore. We have proven that we exist for only the United States and only Israel. Everybody else is way, way down and can be abandoned at any moment. This is a whole new reality that's emerged from this Iranian conflict. The Iranian conflict isn't just about the collapse of America in West Asia. It's about the global collapse of America because we've been exposed as being a military power incapable. When I was in, we were supposed to fight and win 2.5 wars. I remember that, man. We were ready to win 2.5 wars. We could beat you in Europe, we could beat you in Asia, and we'd do a holding action in the Middle East until we brought forces from one of our victories in, and we'd won, and we could do it. We were ready to do it. Today, we can't win one war. America can't fight one war anywhere in the world because We were always based upon bluffing our way through. F-35, F-22, F-18, aircraft carriers, all this stuff. And everybody's supposed to go, oh no, an American carrier is parked off our coast, surrender. And, boom. Iran's proven you can park all the carriers you want off there. You're going to be way the hell out in the ocean because we have missiles that can sink you. And if you get too close, then you're going to maneuver hard and throw an F-18 off board because, you can't launch. It's over. This is the whole point. It's over. There's not a single, this is why I get back to Cuba. If they fight, we can't beat them. There's not a single nation in the world that we can beat if they fight. That's just a statement of outright fact. We don't have the military to do it. And now that drone warfare is becoming more prevalent, look at Israel. They went into Lebanon and they just got the snot slammed out of them by Hezbollah drones. And I was speaking with Russian drone operators who were evaluating the quality of the Hezbollah operation. You can tell, by the video feed how good the pilot is. And so they were saying, early on the Hezbollah guys were like rookies, making rookie mistakes. But then later on, you see the fluidity, the way the drone comes in, the way it approaches, and Hezbollah is getting better and better and better and better at what they're doing. That's why the Israelis can't advance at all, because of drones. Around the world, people are going to be picking up this. So whatever technological advantages we might have had, with a heavy armored brigade, the Iranians have heavy armored brigades. Do you know how quick an American heavy armored brigade would die if it went into Iran? It wouldn't last 3 days. It just wouldn't last 3 days. And that's just, and then we have no reserves to pick up. That's the other thing. War is expensive. War is hard. Everybody's mocking the Russians. They're not advancing fast. Well, I'll tell you what, they got 700,000+ men on the ground advancing in one of the most heavily fortified places on earth against an army that's bigger than them, and they're winning. We can't get 700,000 guys anywhere. Find it. We couldn't do Desert Storm today. We don't have enough troops. We don't have enough troops. We got nothing. Literally nothing. And the airplanes that are supposed to be the winning, we're out of ammunition. And they've never gone up against a real air defense. So Donald Trump has destroyed American credibility, not just in terms of moral authority, but military. We used to be able to at least walk in and go, hey, and people go, oh, we don't want to piss off America. They're tough guys in the room. Now we come and go, hey, and they go, shut up, sit down. We don't care about you. You're nothing. What are you going to do? Bomb us? Okay. We know you can't bomb. Hell, we can't bomb Iran into submission. Think about that. We can't bomb Iran into submission. And we think we can handle Russia? We think we can handle China? We think we can handle North Korea? We are just an absolute hollow shell of a nation militarily, and it's going to bankrupt us. And they're already talking 1.5 trillion. Let me give the American people a clue here. Why spending more money isn't going to help. Our system is so fundamentally broken that no amount of money can fix it. We have to learn from the Germans. Their military was so fundamentally broken that when Olaf Scholz said, give me 100 billion euro so I could quick fix our military, and he got it from the German parliament. Last year they went, how'd that work? It disappeared. They said, well, how did we get any better? Nope, we got worse. See, it's so bad that even when you put more money into it, all you do is perpetuate the things that made it fail to begin with. If you pour money into a broken system, you're just going to have the system continue to break itself. And that's why it's wrong for America to say, here's 1.5 trillion and we'll fix it. No. Wake up, America. We need to start from the bottom. We need to change everything about what we do. And the first thing we have to do is understand that our military cannot be about global conquest anymore. Our military must be about legitimate national security interests, governed by the notion that while American servicemen and women are ready to fight and die for their country, it is the duty and responsibility of every American politician to ensure that we never ask them to fight and die unless it's a cause worthy of that sacrifice, and we lead with diplomacy, not lead with the military. But anyways, enough philosophy.
I would add to what Scott said about, our allies. like Japan and South Korea and all the Gulf GCC countries. It's worse than not having an ally from their point of view when looking at the U.S. It's that Trump and this whole situation has more than anything, and it probably the Ukraine the proxy war against NATO's proxy war against Russia and Ukraine has also unmasked this reality is that, but especially the Persian Gulf and the GCC countries and in East Asia, that the U.S. is running a protection racket, and really that's kind of what it is. And when the protection racket has broken down, all they have is targets painted on them potentially, all these client countries, and then Trump's just very open about it though. He's just like, you got to pay us now, you got to pay us more now, sort of. It's like it's so fitting that we got a New York City president who's pretty much doing the modern geopolitical equivalent of breaking windows and then showing up with the boys afterwards, just like Tony Soprano. Hey, look, it's a dangerous neighborhood, and that's kind of like what it is. The only difference between Saudi and the Israelis is Saudi has to pay. It's the same. They get the same, more or less, the full military gear, all U.S. technical support, all sorts of logistical support, staffing, ammunition, maybe F-35s, full complement, all U.S. top of the range. But Saudi pays, Israel doesn't pay. But all these Arab countries, that's all they've been really good for the U.S. is that they pay. And that's why they're happy. The U.S. regards them as good clients because they pay. But now the whole facade of this has been shattered by Iran. But I think it's also for Europe. I think that realization should have come earlier. Maybe they're a little bit slow in some cases, but certainly Central European countries are realizing this right now.
God, you mentioned Jolani. It's interesting that while Rubio and the others were talking about left-wing terrorists, they invited Jolani to the White House. And you, Patrick, asked for who? Who did they kill the Ayatollah for? Mr. Netanyahu is headed to the White House again on Tuesday. Scott, where do they go from here? They've lost this war 3 times now, it seems like. What are they going to do next?
Lose another war. I mean, Joe, this is a hard question to answer because, I mean, in order to answer this question in a non-superficial way, I'm going to end up sounding like an anti-Semite because Netanyahu is back. The horrific policies he's implemented. Normally one would say that Israel is on the verge of collapse. I mean, Netanyahu is not going to win the next election, but who's going to replace him? What kind of coalition is going to replace him, and how do they sustain it? Israel's become an entity that can only be sustained by violence. Israel cannot coexist with the region peacefully because Israel's become this parasitic cancer. So it has to consume the host. It's incapable of living in harmony with the host. And Israel can't stand by itself. It literally cannot function by itself. It has to be backed by the United States, backed by a global Zionistic presence, and it needs to feed off violence to sustain its legitimacy. So one would normally think that it's going to collapse, but the reality is the Zionism controls America. Like, I mean, hell, we just I don't know if it's passed the Senate yet, but didn't the House just pass that the NDA that sort of makes the Israeli
Yes.
military the American military? I mean, so basically we've now morphed ourselves into the host has decided that the parasite's going to take over the host. That's what we just did. We said, screw it, open up, come in. We are now Israel. And so how do you defeat Israel when America is now Israel? Israel is actually morphed into America, taking over America. I mean, we have to cleanse ourselves. America has to cleanse ourselves. But how do you do that without looking, sounding, acting like an anti-Semite? I mean, that's the thing, the power of ideas here. We've allowed the Jewish faith to be hijacked by Zionism. And so, the second you say, I don't want to support this, oh, you're anti-Jewish. No, I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm just anti what this murderous policy is. I think Netanyahu's, if the United States continues to head in this direction, um, the greater Israeli experiment's going to survive for a long time. I was hoping that they were on their way out. But in order for them to be on their way out, they had to be isolated from the United States. And I thought that was happening. I thought, we were looking at the student movement in the campus. We're looking at a solidification of Americans saying that 60% of America don't support this. But again, the will of the people doesn't matter when the institution has been corrupted to the extent that a cult of personality governs, not an executive linked to a constitution. The United States now has allowed Israel to come into the very thing that preserves our security, the military, the intelligence services. They're now going to control the data that is used to attack people like Patrick and myself and you, Joe. I mean, this is the fact. This is it's a game-changing moment. What's happening now? It's a game-changing moment that means that we will have forever wars in the Middle East. And again, we come back to why this would be. And I talked about it earlier, because the United States cannot continue to hold a dominant position in the world if we have to exist as co-equals in the world, abiding by a singularity of law, a singularity of vision. We will lose that one. We are an inferior country right now. We're inferior economically, militarily, politically. We're inferior culturally. We're inferior in terms of messaging because we stand for nothing. So we still have enough strength in the amalgam of the totality of America, though, that we can be relevant if we create chaos and manage the chaos. And I think right now, Israel has become a tool of chaos that will be managed by the United States, or Israel will use the United States to manage the chaos. I'm not quite sure what the relationship is right now, who's controlling whom, but it doesn't matter. The parasite has taken over the host, and its goal isn't to create peace and stability. Its goal is to create chaos and anarchy, because that's the only way that the United States remains relevant in the world today, by generating chaos and then serving as an agent to manage and influence the chaos, to push the chaos. So that's, I think, where we are. I'm sickened by it, and I know that these words are probably going to have FBI agents kicking down my door sometime in the future, but so be it.
Well, I'm going to add to what Scott's saying and maybe get Scott's comment to see if he has noticed what I've noticed over the last 2 years is a change in rhetoric from this administration and its officials that mirrors Israeli language when it comes to dealing with war, when it comes to, we used to have restraint and proportionality, reciprocity. And we just had a statement from Marco Rubio, who told reporters this week the president's approach to war is, quote, a head for an eye. So it's even more than an eye for an eye. So it's like one of ours, 100 of yours. That's an Israeli maxim: rise and kill first. That is it's a motto of the IDF, of Mossad. So we're adopting, the Trump administration during this period is adopting Israeli rhetoric when it comes to these types of situations. That this, to me, and I've been watching U.S. politics my whole life. I grew up with U.S. politics, and I've never seen this language before. Only recently, official language. So I don't know if, Scott, you've noticed the same thing, but I'm kind of shocked by it, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to accept as an American, if you consider all of the people that came before this in those same positions. But have you noticed this, Scott?
100%. I mean, this is what I'm saying. The parasite is taking over the host. I wrote an article a little more than a year ago, which I linked. I basically called Israel a parasite. I compared them to be, I think, the green wasp that injects itself into the American cockroach and takes over the body. But that's what's happened now. And so what we're seeing is now They have taken over our cortex. They are into our brain, and we are speaking like them. We are using their words. This is the most un-American thing possible. Again, for all the ignorant American people out there that think it's cool to say, rise up and strike first. Yeah, that's great. You understand how un-American this is. You understand that the United States is a nation defined by a body of law, the Constitution, that we are a nation built on the rule of law. You understand that the rule of law, because of the way the Constitution is written, when the president signed a treaty ratified by 2/3 of the United States Senate, that becomes the supreme law of the land, that the United Nations Charter is the supreme law of the land. It's not an inconvenient thing to be embraced when it's okay for us and ignored. It is the law, supreme law. We don't go to war willy-nilly. But this administration is talking like the Israelis. It's become Greater Israel. The Greater Israeli Project, everybody was talking about how it was expanding into the Middle East. No, we missed it. We blew it. The Greater Israeli Project expanded into America and has now hijacked the United States. We are the Greater Israeli Project. We have become the Greater Israeli Project, and it's manifested in the policies and the rhetoric of this administration. And the sad thing is, nobody in Congress is standing up. This is a bipartisan surrender of the takeover of Israel of our country. It sickens me. I mean, Patrick, I apologize because I don't know your background. I don't know if you put any time in the military, and it's not a litmus test of anything. But if you
They tried to recruit me, Scott. They tried to recruit me as I was a good athlete in high school, but unsuccessfully.
We should have got you. No, I'm glad you didn't go. But the
The
point
Marines
is,
came. The Marines came first.
of course,
Yeah,
because we want good
but
athletes.
yeah, I was an NC2A swimmer, so but yeah, so I didn't opt in. So
No, but in just as well. But because then you'd be sick like I am. Because, I bought into it. I mean, I bought into the whole thing. I took the oath. I I love I love the Marine Corps. I mean, I worship the Marine Corps. It's in my system. It's in my blood. But it was all about service to nation, and the nation is defined by the Constitution. When we spoke about America, that's what America was. And now to see that people are putting on the uniform and putting the flag on their shoulder, but we're serving Israel. It's beyond sickening to me. This is absolutely demoralizing. And I would hope that anybody who is serving in the military today understands what's happened here. That it's an insult to everything you claim you stand for. When you say, I am ready to die for my country, lay my life down for my country. Congress just said, well, no, you're going to die for Israel. You're the same as Israel. It's the same. You're one and the same. No, it's not. It's not the same. America is different. And the other thing is, this, as you said, America should always have been tempered. And the thing about America is that we're late to it, but we acknowledge mistakes. I mean, Vietnam, I think today there's a general consensus that was a mistake. A lot of the things we've done, that was a mistake. But now because that we have a moral conscience that's attached to ideals and values that are in the Constitution. But now we're adapting this Israeli approach where murder is acceptable, where the absolute denigration. This is where we come back full circle to where the show started, Joe. You have to understand that the people coming after the left-wing liberals now, this isn't American justice misguided. This is Israeli justice. This is the Israeli approach. When they come after us today, it's not going to be about the National Security Division of the FBI perverting the Constitution. It's going to be this morphed thing, this Zionist hate-filled murder racket that's going to come after anybody who is opposed to it. That's the danger here. The Constitution has lost all value now because what we're doing is legitimizing the language of hate, legitimizing the language of murder, legitimizing the language of torture. This will be adapted by the tools used by the executive branch to silence American voices of opposition. And this is what people need to understand, that this infection, this parasite that has taken over isn't just about foreign policy. It's about domestic policy. And once it silences the anti-Israeli voices, It'll silence every voice. I'll be silenced. You'll be silenced. We'll all be silenced.
And the misuse of the overuse of the term terrorism or terrorist and just slapping this label on everything. I will argue that that's a central problem in the Middle East. That is the central problem, I will argue, and specifically in Lebanon and in Palestine as an example. And that's created all sorts of impediments, roadblocks, and made diplomacy impossible and given carte blanche for unlimited collateral damage. Look at Rafah, look at South Lebanon now, and it's all because of that. That's the bypass of international law, human rights, and norms. Is that, and this is why it's, I think, out of control. Personally, I think this is a problem that needs to be reined in. It is this label that is just being used for pretty much everything, and it's, as you say, Scott, it's not going to end with, quote, proscribed militant groups. It's just that extends to pretty much anybody that's opposing the agenda, or even just opposing a narrative, is enough to get you labeled.
The Ukrainians successfully labeled me. When I say successfully, meaning legislation was passed with American funding, an information terrorist. And the interesting thing is they have committed to why. And there were three main allegations. I know two of them because I can't remember the third one. But the first one was that that Bucha was that I claimed that Bucha was a Ukrainian security services thing. Well, it was. Everybody knows it. There's no debating this point today. The participants have been found guilty at trial. So boom. The second was that I dared say that the conflict was a proxy conflict between the West and Russia. That Ukraine was just the proxy of this. Well, the funny thing is, I think in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks after they condemned me to death for this. Literally, it was condemning me to death. It was a death sentence that they passed on me. The defense minister of Ukraine came out and said, it's a proxy war between NATO and Russia. So, the stupidity of this, but this is the danger of the term terrorist. And especially when it's applied to information terrorist, because when you live in the United States, free speech is free speech. And yet what they're doing is they're turning free speech into, opposition speech, and opposition then becomes terroristic in nature. And now, boom. So you're 100% correct. The misuse of the term terror. Look, I'm not going to sit. I used to think that Hamas was terrorist. When I was traveling to Israel extensively between 1994 and 1998, every time I went there, something bad happened from Hamas, and it was an act of terrorism. There's no doubt about it. But Israel was born on the back of terrorists, Yitzhak Rabin, and people of that nature. The United States was born. Every one of our founding fathers, Sam Adams and everybody, was a terrorist in the eyes of the British. So we have to be careful about the use of terrorism, especially if we're looking to resolve problems.
Yes.
Hezbollah has been called terrorist, but when you actually understand Hezbollah, and look at the growth of Hezbollah from a militant movement to a political party and how it successfully integrated itself into Lebanese society. And the fact that today in Lebanon, a significant proportion of the Lebanese people look upon Hezbollah positively because they see the contributions that Hezbollah makes to the reality of Lebanese society. And yet we call them terrorists. We denigrate everything that Hezbollah has done. The same thing, we denigrate Hamas and the linkage they have with the people of Gaza. It's a bad word. It's a stupid word. We've overused it, and now Israel's come in and hijacked it even further. So I think you were extraordinarily. It was very good of you to bring up that linkage. I like it. I'm gonna run with it at some point in time, Patrick. I'm stealing your thunder.
No, please do. I'm spending a lot of time doing more of this because they're also wanting to make the IRGC, which is a division of the Iranian military, into a proscribed terrorist organization. I think the U.S. might have already done that. I'm not sure, but Europe's done, the EU's done it, and the UK government have done a version of it. But what this is ultimately is a diplomacy killer. It means there's going to be no dialogue. So then it's just fight, 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 kill, 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 and that's it. and that it's assuming the other side can't be reasoned with, can't be spoken to, there can be no middle ground reached. There's no debate, no discussion, nothing, and that's it. And it's just like war, basically, and using the instruments of the state to suppress or put down the terrorist threat, as it were. And that's the problem. In fact, look at the MOU with the U.S. and Iran, Clause 1. It's Lebanon. Why is Israel in Lebanon? The justification is they're fighting the war on terror. And so that's it. All the UN Security Council resolutions in the bin. The whole volume of international precedent law in the bin. And so I think this is the main impediment, actually. This is it. And it's kind of like staring us in the face as humanity right now. And look at what we're willing to wager against this. World War III, the end of humanity. What, to protect this designation? That's really designed to it's an anti-diplomacy tool at the moment. So I think it is worth bringing into the debate. And of course, we have to be careful, because if we speak positively or be seen to show support of or encourage a, quote, prescribed organization in a country that legally has designated them as a terrorist organization, then you can end up in jail. And the UK is a perfect example of that with Palestine Action. So it's a hostile environment as a pundit or a journalist to even bring up this issue. So, but so you have to do it obviously responsibly, depending on where you are, just to be realistic about it. But let's not kid ourselves. This is a central problem. It's a central problem, I think. And Scott, and Joe, it's not as if it's impossible to deproscribe organizations. I'll start with the PLO. Okay, PLO is the main office of the Palestinian state or authority, would recognize Palestinian state. Let's talk about the ANC in South Africa, ruling party for many years in South Africa. Let's even go crazy. The MEK, the Mujahideen al-Kek, was deproscribed by Hillary Clinton and others. That was for maybe not so good reasons, to create money flows into the pockets of U.S. Congressmen and senators and people like John Bolton and Rudy Giuliani and so forth, so they could make some extra income. But that aside,
Al-Qaeda was deprescribed.
Well, yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, that's the big one. Al-Qaeda
That's the big one. So it's not as if, Scott, it can't be done. It can be done. Just has to be some political inertia behind it.
The first time I heard the language that made me think that the U.S. was becoming like Israel, or the Israelization of the United States, was right after 9/11, Bush's talk about going in Afghanistan. I said, they're looking at the world in this open-ended anti-terrorist attack. It's completely what Israel's been doing, and it's gone so far since then, so much worse. When Netanyahu did that 60 Minutes interview maybe 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, when he said, we're not going to take U.S. money anymore within 10 years. Scott and I discussed that on an earlier show, and we said that the UAE would probably be one of the replacements for that. But little did I understand then that he meant the IDF would be merged into the Pentagon. So that there's not going to have to be U.S. money funding Israel. It's going to be part of the Pentagon budget, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, and the income for Israel will be substantial.
That's how they're going to solve that problem.
And licensing technology, all this other stuff. It's endless.
So just the practical issue now of what would Trump have to go back to an MOU, the same one or a new one now? How are they going to go forward with this when they realize they cannot win this war? But Netanyahu needs the war to continue to go on. He's going to go and press him. Now, Israel's been on the sidelines, Scott. Are they going to stay there, or are they going to enter the war now if the U.S. wants to back off?
I think Israel will stay on the sideline as long as possible. Again, we need to remember why the 39-day war came to an end. It came to an end because the United States lost the capacity to operate effectively against Iran. and Israel lost the capacity to defend itself. The Iranians were hitting a range of targets near the end of the 39-day war. Targets, things were going boom inside Israel. That to the average, onlooker, first of all, the Israelis did a good job of shutting down coverage of where missiles were hitting, but places were blowing up that were extraordinarily sensitive to the Israelis, dealing with their intelligence, their national security infrastructure, places that were top secret, and they were blowing up. Now, the Israelis could write it off saying they struck an apartment building, they struck a hospital, they struck this, but the Israelis knew what the Iranians struck, which means that the Israelis were aware of two things. The Iranians knew almost everything there was to know about Israel's national security and how it was, what the infrastructure was, and that Iran could strike it with impunity, and that there was nothing Israel could do to defend itself. And if this conflict had continued to go on, Israel would have taken very big hits, and this is why they begged for the cessation of conflict. Israel knows this today. Israel has not improved its air defense. They've received more missiles, et cetera, but the bottom line is the Iranians have the ability to replicate exactly the same scenario that they successfully implemented the first go around. There's nothing Israel can do ultimately to prevent Iran from hitting all the targets it wants to hit inside Israel. And so Israel doesn't want to go. And there's a lot of bluffing, a lot of talk that we'll do this, that, and the other thing. But Israel does not want this war to go on, and the United States doesn't want it to go on because we can't defend Israel. And so I think Israel is more than happy to let the United States commit suicide on its behalf, which is exactly what we're doing.
Well,
Yep.
all right, I want to do a quick. Yes, go
definitely
on.
second what I would second what Scott said. Israel doesn't care whether a MAGA administration's in or a Democrat administration. They don't care. The U.S. economy hits the wall. They don't care, and so they'll let the U.S. bleed out economically, politically. And you know what the next election cycle is going to be? I can just hear the debate stage on the Republican and the Democrat. Well, we think Trump has not managed this war very well in Iran. Well, we need to do all we can to arm Israel and give everything they need to defend themselves, and maybe just manage this slightly differently. And I can kind of project what 2028 will end up being like. But for Iran, it will be a force majeure, probably. They're just going to move, and the region's going to move. And I think the U.S. Options are just going to be less and less in the region over time. And if it's a war of attrition, I just cannot see the U.S. Coming out in a better place. In fact, they've already lost a tremendous amount. So, but it'll be, I think the trick in American politics will be to package this loss as either a win or some kind of better distraction can emerge to take the public away while they sweep up the mess behind them. That's probably what's coming.
But Patrick, there's one thing also I think you're going to see in the next election. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, though. My first trip upon being elected will be to go to Israel. That seems to be the game-winning formula. My first trip.
That'll get you a big fat check in your campaign coffers.
Mamdani was able to avoid that, but
that used to be the first trip of a New York City mayor when he was elected until Mamdani came along. I went to Israel for some reason. I want to transition, and I have a perfect way to transition to Ukraine. This little tidbit here. Quoting from the New York Times, President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday that Ukraine struck a cargo vessel moving military supplies between Iran and Russia in the Caspian Sea. He said Ukraine also hit an oil platform and a Russian missile ship in the Caspian, which is more than 600 miles away from the front line. In Ukraine, man, he's doing his bit. He's chipping in to fight Iran, isn't he, Scott?
Apparently, Russia's going to surrender and Iran's going to surrender because Zelensky is so damn good. Look, the Ukrainians have invested a lot of money and resources given to them by the West, or the West is investing on behalf of Ukraine intelligence resources. And they are able to go out and make things go pop, as I said. Things aren't going boom, they're going pop. And pop is a harassment. Pop is an irritant. Pop, you can, take photographs of pop and show it to each other and get everybody really excited about what you see. Nothing Iran is doing is stopping. If you think that this drone attack against the ship stops the potential of Russia's flow of support to Iran, if that is indeed happening, it doesn't. You think it's going to cause the Caspian Sea not to be a Russian sea? It isn't. Look at the Black Sea. For a long time, everybody was saying, "Oh, the Iranians have taken over the Black Sea." Well, Iran lost the Black Sea because Russia just woke up and said, "All right, we're going to flex." And they flex Iran right out, or Ukraine right out of existence. Nothing Zelensky says makes a difference. Nothing he says makes a difference. While he was saying that, talking about the supremacy of the Ukrainian long range sanctions, as he likes to call them, there was a drone exhibition in the Bucha neighborhood of Kiev that was hit by an Iskander or two, and a lot of people died, including some Western uh, people. They're not telling us exactly whom, but I'm not saying that they were there. But Raytheon was visiting Kiev at the same time, and drone people, Polish drone people were there. Um, the West is ignoring the fact that while Ukraine makes things go pop, Russia makes things go boom, and Russia is making things go boom all over the place. And it's in it. The thing that the thing that the West wanted to happen in Moscow, the Moscow Maidan, where the people rose up and surrounded the Kremlin and demanded the change, and the wet dream that's existed ever since Wagner rose up, that somehow the military will step in and remove. Look what just happened in Kiev. Their corrupt little money grabbing for defense minister got replaced, and then the head of their ground forces got replaced. And there's a major reshuffling. There are no Nazis in Ukraine, Laura Loomer says, except the people that are replacing these people are literal Nazis. The elevation of the Nazis, the reburial of Andrei Melnik, and the glorification of this. They're now going to relocate another founder of the organization Ukrainian nationalism to Ukraine. This is what Ukraine is in. I can't call it total collapse right now, but we're looking at, end game. The things that have been predicted for so long, the collapse of Ukrainian society, the collapse of Ukrainian governance, the collapse of Ukrainian economy, it's all happening in real time, sustained only by the artificial notion of Ukrainian ability to win this war because of drones. And so, yes, there's a story. A Ukrainian drone hit a Russian ship in the Caspian Sea that may or may not have been going to Iran. Who cares? Who cares? Nobody cares except the Western media that parrots this. I don't think Vladimir Putin was awoken in the middle of the night. Oh my God, they hit a ship in the Caspian. He doesn't care. If he does, it's the extent of find out who did it and kill them. And there are Russian drone units. I've spoken about one of the four, Rubicon. That's their job. Rubicon's job is to hunt down and kill Ukrainian drone operators, and they're very good at it. There's other units, Burevisnik, there's other units out there doing the same thing. The West isn't talking about. Ukraine is losing this war on every level. There's not a single level Ukraine is winning except the information warfare level. And you can't be dismissive of it, because it does what all the lies that echo in the West, or that are being resonated in the West, echo back into Russia, and and it creates a dissonance inside Russia. It doesn't mean that Vladimir Putin's in danger of falling, but the same game that was being played. I mean, past patterns repeat themselves, and just go back and take a look at 2007, 2008 in Russia, and what the opposition was trying to do at that time. The idea was, in order to keep Vladimir Putin from coming back into power, you needed to create a viable opposition that could take control of the Duma. And by taking control of Duma, you would block United Russia's ability to facilitate the swap between the presidency and the prime ministership. And so it was all about the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma. The same damn things happening today. Everything they're doing, the lies they're telling right now, Navalny's lies about corruption. I mean, there weren't total lies. Of course, there was corruption in Russia. I mean, my God, the decade of 1990s created nothing but corruption, and Vladimir Putin has been seeking to manage that corruption in a way that doesn't that allows Russia to grow and not collapse. But you can't just kill all the corrupt people overnight. You know, it's a system that has to be purged over time. And so, of course, it was easy for Navalny to come out and go, you do this corruptly, you do this corrupt. Yes, Alexander Navalny, of course they do. It's Russia post 1990s. You know, give the dude a chance, but his job wasn't to give him a chance. Today, the same stupidity is playing out where they think they can create this echo chamber that's going to remove United Russia from the parliament in September. I mean, that's the goal, that's the objective. By basically removing Vladimir Putin's party, you'll create the conditions for the collapse of Vladimir Putin. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Somebody once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Everything we hear right now, this is what frustrates me. Everything we hear about this is a lie. My favorite person, Gilbert Doctorow, has come out and said that he, I was invited to a conference. No, you weren't. You were an observer of a conference where people spoke. But he said, Saldo, the governor of Kherson, came out and spoke and, talked about the crimes committed to people. And he said, most people would hear that the Ukrainians are committing crimes. What I heard is that Russia lost the war. I didn't hear that. I was invited to speak at that conference. I just wasn't able to make it. I know the governor personally. I've met him. Doctorow never has. He would never say this. Yana Lantratova, the head of the Ombudsman for Children's Rights. I know her personally. She's a very close friend of mine. I know her. I know what she said. I talked to her about what she was going to say. She didn't say what Doctorow says. Doctorow takes what people says, cherry picks it, and then spreads lies. This is what's happening. People are out there. They're agents of influence, agents of chaos. They're seeking to create an echo chamber inside Russia designed to create a political result. That's just a long way of saying, Joe, we have to be careful about everything we see in Western media because it's all being controlled by the masters of information operation, the CIA, MI6. They are running a massive information operation, and they're using agents of influence who are either witting or unwitting. Doctorow did self-identify as a member of the Russian opposition since 2010. So I don't know if he's unwitting, but it is what it is.
Remind our viewers that we invited Mr. Gilbert Doctorow to come here, either as a solo guest or to debate Scott Ritter, and he's declined. So I want to ask you, Scott, the end game. It looks like Ukraine is imploding right now. While, as you say, the story in the West is they're winning the war because of the drones. If Russia wants to move on the front in the south and move on Odessa eventually, what would an attack on Odessa look like? Could they do a cauldron around a city of that size? Would there be intense street fighting, urban warfare? Would the Russian population in Odessa make it easier for the Russians to take that city? What would that look like militarily? I don't know if you've given any thought to that. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, let's just look at it's basic military math. Look at the front the way it is right now. 700,000 troops on this extended front. There's a potential of an extension even further in the north with Sumy and Chernihiv and other areas. The Russians putting forces there to draw away from. But the second you start moving into Odessa, I mean, it's just a matter of just take the pen and see what it does to the line. You see this massive extension. And if the concept of taking Odessa means linking up with Transnistria, now look at that line. You have almost doubled the frontage, which means you need troops beyond what you have. in order for Russia to even think about taking Odessa or occupying, not taking Odessa, but occupying that land, you're talking, if it's contested, they're going to need another 500,000 troops. This is why people are saying there's talk about additional mobilization after the parliamentarian elections in September 20th. Although somebody has come out in Russia and said there will be, and I actually believe there will be no mobilization. I don't think Russia's looking for a fight in Odessa. Odessa is a Russian city of great historical importance, and the Russians just aren't going to go block by block by block and destroy this pearl of the Black Sea. I think what Russia's looking for is the collapse of Ukrainian resistance. You know, the moment Ukraine stops to resist in a cohesive fashion, then the occupation of Odessa becomes possible. And I think that that's the direction Russia's going. Vladimir Putin, again, I just go back to the fact that, you know, our good friend Gilbert Doctorow wants Russia to strike Ukraine now, or strike Germany now, strike England now. But that would just simply be doing what the Ukrainians want to have happen. So Ukraine's losing because NATO isn't going to come in on their behalf. And there is no real NATO capacity. And if you take a look at what's happening in Germany, I mean in Europe, you know, Macron is gone next year. Probably Marine Le Pen is going to be the next president of France. Good chance. She's leading the polls right now, even though she's got a monitoring bracelet on. I think she took it off temporarily. But you know, Merz history, AfD on the ascendant. Fact is, they are the most popular political party in Germany today. So you can't nullify. They're going to be part of the next German government, whether they're leaders of it or they're, you know, Starmer's out. We've got some dude from Manchester in there. How long he's going to last, don't know. Europe is in absolute chaos, and so now Vladimir Putin's winning. We just said he's winning everywhere. But this isn't just about winning on the battlefield. It's about winning economically. Putin spoke at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in a plenary address that everybody's ignoring, and they shouldn't. He didn't mention the war once during the plenary address. He didn't mention it once. Why? Because it's not the driving force of Russia. Vladimir Putin knows that Russia, in order to continue to expand into this sovereign nation capable of managing its own affairs without dependence upon the West, needs investment, needs foreign investment. The St. Petersburg International Forum, he created, you know, the notion of what a stable Russia would look like. And a stable Russia is not a Russia at war with Europe. That's the antithesis of a stable Russia. A stable Russia is a Russia that it has a special military operation in Ukraine that is now committed to win, but is looking elsewhere for expansion. 20,000 people from 130 nations attended. Double in size from last year. $84 billion were directly invested in the Russian economy as a result of St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. That's because the world looks at Russia and says that they believe that Vladimir Putin is the leader that will take them forward. Well, he won't be that leader if he attacks Europe. The second he attacks Europe, he stops being that leader. People forget that there is an economic aspect to this. Gilbert Doctorow says he must bomb them now with an exclamation mark. Ask yourself why. It's not because he loves Russia. Then we look at politically. Sergei Lavrov just went to Africa, did a little four-nation tour. Started in Ethiopia. Why? Well, Ethiopia is a nation under tremendous pressure. The you know, Tigray and the Eritrea is making a move on them and all this. So Russia came in and talked about long-term stability. Long-term stability. Russia is a good, stable friend. Russia is not a colonial power seeking to exploit Ethiopia. They're looking to invest. Then he went to the Sahel. I think he went to, I think it was Mali he went to. But actually, he met with the foreign ministers, or he might have gone to Niger. I can't remember. But he's met with the foreign ministers of all three of the AES alliance of Sahel states, and he said, Russia is here for you. We will never abandon you. There was just a major offensive in Mali, French-backed, you know, Tuareg rebels and Islamists moving in, and everybody said, Russia got their asses kicked because they saw a couple dead Russian bodies on the battlefield. Yeah, well, who's dying today? Africa Corps is there. You know, wiping them out. Russia's not going to leave. Russia is a foundation of stability in the Sahel, which is much needed stability given what the French were doing. Then he went down to Burundi, I think. And again, talked about Russian investment in Burundi, because Burundi, I think, is going to be the head of the African Union coming up. They were voted in as the head of the African Union. And why is this important? In October, the Russian African Summit is getting together, and Russia is going to redefine what Africa is to the world. Russia has a global vision, and people believe in the Russian global vision because Russian diplomacy, unlike American diplomacy, is real. But if Russia went to war against Europe, that shreds everything. Russia loses credibility. Everything they're doing with China, everything they're doing to create this diplomatic, barrier against the West, promotion of multipolarity, collapses if Russia goes against. So Vladimir Putin is not going to attack Europe. Vladimir Putin is winning on all fronts, but the fronts are far more than just the military front. The front is economic and political and domestic. And again, I am confident, what the hell do I know about politics? But I'm confident that Vladimir Putin is not going to take a big hit at the polls in September. That the Russian people, like the Iranian people, were rallying around their the old saying that, in Russia is especially true. You don't change horses mid-race. And Russia's sort of in a big race right now. And everybody's saying, well, we're just going to go ahead and dump United Russia, and we're going to, Gilbert Doctorow wants to fire all of the general staff. Gerasimov must go. The general staff must be fired. Why? They're winning. Gilbert, they're winning. And you want to fire them because they're winning? This is the stupidity of this approach, but it's the Western approach. The design is chaos inside Russia. I think that the Russians have a winning formula. As we see, Ukraine is starting to implode, and they will continue. People say, when? How long? It doesn't matter. As I said, Vladimir Putin will win. This war will be won when the objectives are reached. The interesting thing is diplomacy and the role that diplomacy could play. Based upon the talks that Putin had with or Lavrov had with Rubio, the door for negotiated settlement is apparently still open. But how do you have a settlement with a nation that's agreement incapable? Lavrov has defined the United States as being agreement incapable. How can Russia ever trust the United States, especially after first of all, you have the betrayal of Minsk, where Merkel and Hollande and Poroshenko all admit that it was all a fraud designed to buy time to build up the Ukrainian army so they could kill Russians. All right. And now you have Putin and Lavrov both saying about Anchorage. I'd hate to believe that this was just to buy time so that they could rebuild the Ukrainian military, but it was exactly to buy time to rebuild the Ukrainian military. So now we see the Ukrainian military collapsing as we speak. And now, all of a sudden, we want to have diplomacy again. Are the Russians going to fall for it the third time? I don't know. I don't know. But remember, the Russians can't turn their back on diplomacy because it's a delicate game they're playing. They're playing this delicate game of making sure that they are the nation of laws. And it's very difficult to be a law-abiding nation when your opponent is a rogue nation that adheres to no laws.
Third time, the first time being Minsk, the second time being Anchorage.
Yeah.
Patrick, you want to weigh in on this?
No, not much more I can say. If you just want to talk about, betrayals in negotiations, just the United States has a pretty bad record. If you combine all the other examples of that with Iran, and we can extend that to Hezbollah negotiations, Soleimani negotiations, Hamas negotiations in Doha, whatever. This seems like a pretty bad pattern that we're seeing.
You can go back to Native American treaties, but we don't want to go back that far. So thank you guys for giving me, we've spoken for 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's an extraordinary amount of time you've given up, and I appreciate it. It was an excellent conversation. Your intervention on Iran was incredible, Patrick. Thank you so much, and Scott, your interaction with him on that was really the highlight of the show. But we covered a lot of ground. I thank you, Patrick Hensington and Scott Ritter, and I thank Kathy.